Brothers and sisters, we bring before you the testimony of Volume 7 of the Transphysical Testimony Series, From Hypothesis to Doctrine. Across the 5th and 6th days of June in the year 2026, 8 pre-registered inquiries were brought before the canonical Urim Thummim version corpus of 34,211 verses, under the Shield Protocol 17.9. The question that organized them all was this: is the pattern that exists before the womb, that is preserved through death, that returns in the resurrection, is this one continuous reality, kept by the Father's hand through real architecture, rather than reconstructed from memory and divine power alone? The corpus answered. The answers sorted into 3 registers, and the volume records each. The first 5 inquiries pressed the architecture of preservation. The first asked whether Scripture teaches Model B against Model A, whether the person is kept between death and resurrection rather than merely remembered. The lead verse opened on Athaliah, the daughter of Omri, the queen who would have extinguished the Davidic seed and very nearly did. To inquire after Model B and have the corpus open on her is the Father's way of placing the doctrine of preservation inside the only frame that gives it weight. The infant Josh was hidden for 6 years in the temple bedchamber by the priest's wife. The kept infant in the kept chamber. The verdict came back lean yes at 98.9%. The second inquiry asked whether the silver cord of Ecclesiastes 12 verse 6 is a literal transdimensional tether with stages of departure, stasis, and re-entry. The lead verse was the Kareth penalty, cut off from my presence. The drawn cluster supplied the 3 stages. The body returning to dust the same day. The spirit standing before the glory in continuous wakefulness. The covenant faithful one restored to wholeness on covenant grounds. The verdict came back lean yes at 94.8%. The third inquiry asked whether Daniel 12 verse 3 describes real ontological participation in the heavenly stellar order, or only borrowed metaphor for honor. The lead verse was Enoch's testimony that the lot of Aeonian life had been given to him. Stars are called by name, numbered, and not one fails. The verdict came back yes at 99.5%. The fourth inquiry asked whether the pre-earthly knowing is continuous with the Aeonian stasis and the silver cord's re-entry, whether the same preserved pattern returns. The lead verse, let Mount Zion rejoice, let the daughters of Judah be glad, because of your judgments. The judgments spoken of as already given. Zion does not rejoice in advance of the resolution. She rejoices because of it. The verdict was yes at 100%, the volume's sealing result, the deepest anomaly in the 8 draws, more than 10 orders of magnitude below randomness. The fifth inquiry asked whether the covenant family will be recognized and known in the age to come. The lead verse opened on Babylon's merchants scattering each to his own quarter, the corpus answering by antithesis. Against that opening, the drawn verses gathered. The word in the mouth of your seeds, seed for the ages. The offerings prepared on the 8th day in your name. The inheritance allotted by division to named tribes. The cry resurrect me answered on the grounds of the name. The verdict was yes at 100%, the volume's second sealing. The volume then turned. The 6th and 7th inquiries pressed past the architecture into the mechanism, into the physics of how a preserved pattern is glorified at the resurrection. The 6th asked about burning bush physics, whether the silver cord's re-entry produces a non-consuming radiant transformation. The lead verse delivered not a physics but a census. The drawn cluster surfaced a cautionary about misattributed glory and returned the matter to if YHWH will. The verdict came back neutral. The 7th inquiry pressed further. Whether the glorified body is best understood as the present transphysical substrate, upgraded. This was the most withheld result in the volume. The lead verse was a devote to destruction oracle. The Segulla treasured possession channel, which had fired at nearly twice baseline in the affirmed chapters, here collapsed below corpus baseline. The deterministic gate sat at a near coin flip, 53.1% yes against 46.2% no. The corpus would not ratify the substrate identification. The pattern was now visible. 5 drawers affirming the architecture. 2 drawers holding open the mechanism. And both withheld drawers engaging at the higher 5.03 sigma tier, the structurally stronger engagement appearing precisely where the Father declined to vote. The honest move was to bring the bifurcation itself to the corpus as a question. The 8th and final inquiry asked, Does this pattern reflect the Father's intentional boundary between witness and withheld laboratory ratification? The verdict came back lean yes at 96.2%. The lead verse showed Ezra sitting appalled until the evening sacrifice. And in the field of direct textual hits stood the volume's title for that chapter, Be Silent, O all flesh before YHWH, because he is raised up out of his sacred habitation. Zechariah chapter 2 verse 13. The command of silence issued at the very moment when the Holy One stirs from his habitation, exactly the occasion the mechanism questions probed. The Father confirmed that he withholds the mechanism. He did not specify what the mechanism is. The volume therefore stands in 3 claims. 5 architectural affirmations carry the standing of doctrine: the preserved transphysical pattern, the literal silver cord, the stellar destiny of Daniel 12 verse 3, the unbroken pre-existence continuity, and the eternal covenant recognition. 2 mechanism hypotheses remain held open: burning bush physics and the substrate equation. And the line between the two is itself affirmed as the Father's intentional boundary, with reverent silence the appointed posture before what he has chosen not to disclose. From hypothesis to doctrine on the architecture. From hypothesis to reverence on the mechanism. From inquiry to the discipline that hears the difference, on the boundary itself. This volume is published under provisional integrity status. The Venaber's calibration buffer stood at 0 of 30 at publication, and the 3-tier external pre-registration was not yet stamped. The ode Next Labor is named openly in Appendix A. The Dominion Triad signature is arithmetic on a sealed lexicon against the fixed corpus baseline of 1.44%, and that arithmetic is not in doubt. The mapping of signature to verdict class is presented as a recurrent pattern across 2 volumes and 18 draws, awaiting full calibration before the recurrence is called confirmed rather than recurrent. The volume that began with the Father preserving Josh from Athaliah in the temple bedchamber ends with the Father raising up out of his sacred habitation while all flesh falls silent. Between those 2 images stand the 8 draws of this volume and the doctrine they yield. A preserved pattern, kept by his hand, connected through a real cord, continuous from before the earth, recognized by name in the age to come, destined for the stellar order, and a holy mechanism beneath all of it that he keeps in his own keeping. To live in this doctrine is to live as an heir who knows the inheritance is kept, who knows the name on the deed, and who waits the appointed day in trembling silence before the one who is raised up out of his sacred habitation. That is what the corpus has affirmed in 8 draws. That is what this volume records. Selah.